So, if you don't mind, mute your microphone so that first I would like to tell you that there is not going to be a debate today. I got a cancellation email from Mr. Sheftel this morning when I woke up, and I got an email from him. He claims that the whole thing was not handled properly, that we agreed on a moderator who is also right-wing person, not as much as Mr. Sheftel. We agreed on him. I conversed with that person, and I agreed with him on the price and everything. And but Mr. Sheftel sent me an email. He said that the moderator did not receive confirmation, did not receive a link, even though I sent it twice. And I had a conversation with him over the phone, and he said the whole thing was not handled properly, and therefore he's pulling out. I called him up. I had a conversation. I told him that this excuse doesn't make sense to me, that we should, try to do it. And I tried to call the moderator. The moderator did not respond, so Mr. Sheftel did not agree to be without a moderator. Therefore, I had to cancel the interpreter, and you guys are stuck with me. I decided to nevertheless have the conversation about Zionism, present a little bit of what I wanted to present in the debate, and open it up to a discussion, because I think that the subject matter is very, very important. Let me just tell you a little bit about my background. My name is Joseph Avasar. I was born in Israel. My parents immigrated to Palestine in 1936, 12 years before the creation of the State of Israel. My father wrote in his memoirs that he was a Zionist. He was fascinated with writings that were translated from English to Arabic, and he read them when he was a youth in Baghdad, and he was fascinated with Zionism, and he decided to immigrate to Palestine. I think he was years old when he immigrated from Baghdad to Jerusalem and then to Tel Aviv. He wrote that they took a luxury bus from Baghdad, him and my mother and my older brother, who was a few months old. They received a visa from the British embassy in Baghdad to enter Palestine. And my mother was not a Zionist. My father was. And they decided to travel to Palestine. He wrote that they took a luxury British bus to Damascus, and from Damascus to Jerusalem, where they stayed with relatives for a while, and then they moved to Yafo.
Try to blow it up, that it has mined the area.
So if you don't mind, unmute your, so my father was, I was born 5 years after the creation of the State of Israel. In Israel, when you're part of society, you're almost automatically a Zionist. I consider myself a Zionist. I served in the Israeli military. I was went through the educational system in Israel. And I never really thought about the meaning of Zionism until maybe 25 years ago when I started examining that issue. And then the more I looked into it, the more I realized that I am really not a Zionist. And then the more I looked into it further, I realized that I am anti-Zionist. And for the simple reason, to me, the way I looked at it, Zionism is a philosophy, it's an ideology that really prevents the possibility of making peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Zionism created the state of Israel. Zionism was the foundation for the state of Israel. And Zionism was the instigator of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or the Arab-Jewish conflict. Zionism started really in Europe. I'm sure you all know that, by Theodor Herzl in the first Zionist convention in Basel took place in 1897. And the Zionist philosophy was to tell the Jews that anti-Semitism is so rooted in Europe, in East Europe mostly, but also, he was reporting from France too, from Paris. So Theodor Herzl, father of Zionism, who wrote the book, The Jewish State, his idea was that anti-Semitism is rooted in Europe, and it cannot be, and in order to have a safe place for the Jews, they need to have their own country. The more I thought about it, I realized that was the wrong remedy, because if there was, and I'm not questioning, I understand that there was anti-Semitism in Europe in the 19th century and the 20th century. There's no question about that, the anti-Semitism against Jews. But the remedy of running away from Europe, the remedy of telling the Jews to move into another country and to have their own country, is the wrong remedy, especially when it was to move to Palestine, but any other country, because you don't run away from anti-Semites. You fight them. You fight anti-Semitism. You demand equality, and you do not, by running away from anti-Semites, you're basically accepting your status, the status of the Jewish people, to be a second-class status. You're saying, yes, we need to move away in order to make the life of anti-Semites who think that we do not belong to this country. And by the way, they lived there for hundreds of years, to tell them, yeah, now you need to move away, a place where they lived, where they had their businesses, where they had their culture, their parents lived. I mean, to say, well, now we're going to go away in order to accommodate anti-Semites is basically validating what the anti-Semites want, which is to give the Jewish people second-class status and to create a culture of fear from the anti-Semites. And then where do you move to? You move to Palestine, where the vast majority of the people are Muslims. and you go to them and you say, you know, this is a Jewish state. We are coming after 2,000 years. And when I say the vast majority, I'm talking about almost 1 million people in Palestine in the end of the 19th century were Muslim. They were not Jewish. And the number of Zionists who came were in the thousands, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. And it is extremely unreasonable and not peaceful to go to them and say, well, we are now creating a Jewish state. We're coming after 2,000 years. And we are sorry for the fact that you are Muslim, but this is going to be a Jewish state. When you do that, you're creating a mechanism of a conflict and that ensued into violence. And what the Zionist Jews did is they created a culture of fear it was from the anti-Semite in Europe, but now it's against Arabs. And with that culture of fear, which I say is Zionism, is really about a culture of fear, always being afraid of someone. And then I realized that this culture of fear is necessary to have in order to have Zionism, because Zionism without fear of anti-Semite cannot exist. And therefore, it needs to perpetuate itself, and it needs to have constant fear, and it needs to have constant enemies. And because it needs to have constant enemies, and it will never be able to make peace with the Palestinians. And the Palestinians' refusal to have a Jewish state made perfect sense because they're not Jewish. Why would they want a Jewish state? Coupled with the idea that a Jewish state cannot never be a democracy, it made me realize that Zionism is really it's not beneficial to the Jews themselves. It creates a philosophy, an ideology that is putting the Jewish people themselves in a perpetual war against Palestinians. Now, I looked at the Declaration of the State of Israel, which Ben-Gurion himself declared on May 15, 1948. That's the day that the British mandate left. And it was on a Sabbath. On the same day that the British mandate left Palestine, on that same Saturday, Ben-Gurion and 35 other Jewish leaders declared the creation of Israel as a Jewish state. And in that declaration, on that date, he said that the Jewish state will have a constitution on October 1st, 1948. So that means that from May 15, when he made that declaration, on October 1st, which is 4.5 months later, they will have a constitution for a Jewish state. Well, they didn't have a constitution for a Jewish state by October 1st, 1948. They never had a constitution 75 years later. And then you ask yourself, well, why is it that they never came up with a constitution? Because a constitution is the foundation of the country. It explains, it's the blueprint of the country. It tells the people what kind of government they should expect, what kind of philosophy they will have. And Ben-Gurion never came up with the Constitution, not by October 1st, and not during the time that he was the prime minister, which is about 10 years after. And they never came up with a constitution 75 years later. They don't have a constitution. The reason they do not have a constitution is because a constitution for a democratic Jewish state it's an impossibility. And further, that a Jewish state cannot be democratic. And he knew that. Ben-Gurion knew that. He knew that because he promised to have a constitution and he never had one. And all the leaders of Israel are aware of that until today. So that made me think further that it's really a country that cannot be democratic. Further, he said that the reason for the creation of a Jewish state was the Holocaust in Europe, not any conflict with the Palestinians or with Arabs or with Muslims. I'll read it to you. The catastrophe which recently befell the Jewish people, the massacre of millions of Jews in Europe, was another clear demonstration of the urgency of solving the problem of its homelessness by reestablishing in Eretz Israel the Jewish state. He never mentioned anything about violence with the Palestinians or violence with Muslims. He only mentioned violence in Europe, the Holocaust itself. So why are we having this conflict with Muslims? Why are we having this conflict with the Palestinians? The reason we have a conflict with Muslims and Palestinians is because Zionism is a culture that teaches us to be afraid of something, always be afraid. The Palestinians are the wrong enemy. And Zionism does not understand or does not want to understand or does not accept the fact that they have a legitimate reason not to want a Jewish state. So what I think is that the Declaration of Independence of May 15, 1948 was a major mistake, was a major error. Instead of demanding the creation of a Jewish state, it should have created or demanded the creation of a democracy, a true democracy with Jews, Palestinians, Muslims who lived there. That would have avoided the Nakba. It would have avoided all the wars. I mean, within days of his Declaration of Independence, there were Jews and Muslim and Palestinians in there started a bloodbath that never ended for 75 years. A bloodbath. Thousands and thousands of Jews have been killed, and thousands of Palestinians and thousands of Muslims have been killed since the creation of the State of Israel. So the State of Israel as a Jewish state is unable to give peace. It is unable to give security to the Jewish people. Remember, the purpose of creating a Jewish state was to give security to the Jewish people. And it did the opposite. And it's all because it is unable to be democratic. It's unable to include the Palestinians in a respectable, honest, dignified way to have the Palestinians and the Israelis live in peace and equality. And that's the reason that I am against Zionism. So that was the essence of what I was going to tell Mr. Schefter. I was hoping he will be here. He's not. So I'll open it up to questions and comments right now.
Can I say something first, Yosef?
Yes.
I think that we have to start by definitions. There are actually 4 types of Zionism. Herzl started it, but then 3 other movements started, and one of them is very important. The second one that was very important is the one that was created by Jabotinsky. Until 1977, Israel was built or operated based on the Herzl Zionism. In 1977, Jabotinsky took over. Herzl's idea was compromising. Herzl never said that all of Eretz Israel, land of Israel, belongs to the Jews. Jabotinsky said it, that everything belongs to the Jews. And once the Jewish people have a country in all of Eretz Israel, all of land of Israel, then they will build an iron wall between them and the Arabs.
Okay, but
Zionism, according to Herzl, is only now outside Israel. Israel now is not Zionism that Herzl started. It's the other way around. It's now Jabotinsky. And as long as Jabotinsky is in the government of Israel, there will never be peace. There will always be war. Never.
well, let me.
The problem is we have to
Israel.
change the government of Israel.
Okay, I am against a Jewish state, period. Zionism created a Jewish state, so it doesn't really matter whether
I can't be against the country I was born in.
it doesn't. I'm not speaking about you. I'm speaking about peace. Okay. In order to have peace, you have to have equality. You have to have democracy. You have to have a constitution that respects everyone. So whether it's Herzl or Jabotinsky, the idea of having a Jewish state based on Zionism or any, that by itself is a recipe for constant violence with the Palestinians because they are not Jewish. They don't want the Jewish state. They see the whole area as their country. And regardless of how you dress it, it's not going to work if you call yourself a Jewish state, period. Okay, let's go to Nasir and then Len and then Charles.
Let Len go first.
Okay, Len. Len Bennett and then Nasir and then Charles.
Okay, first of all, Israel was not created after World War II. That's a lie. Israel was created.
Well, wait a minute. It's not a lie.
Wait a second. Let me speak.
No, but you say it's a lie.
You
May
have said
15, 1948 is the declaration.
no, it is not. Will you let me speak, or am I not allowed to talk? That's very
When
unfortunate.
you say something is a lie that is so obviously not a lie,
okay,
it's
well,
offensive.
it is. Okay. Am I going to speak, or are you going to interrupt me? The state of Israel basically was created in 1920. This was after World War I.
That's a lie.
That's funny. It was created with a British mandate for Palestine at the time when the Germans and the Ottoman Empire were defeated by the Allies. The Ottoman Empire was broken up. There were mandates prepared for the Palestinian mandate, the British mandate for Palestine, as well as for Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq. There were a number of mandates created. So that created the British mandate for Palestine, and it was ratified by the League of Nations, which was the world.
You said
Excuse me, in 1922. It was ratified 2 years later by the Anglo-American Conference. And in 1945, when the United Nations was created, Article 8, I can't remember if it's 8 or 20, stated that what was promised to Jews in the mandate was permanent, so that nothing the UN can do after the League of Nations had accepted the British mandate of Palestine as the reconstituted homeland for the Jews could be changed. So that's when Israel started, Joseph. The Arab attacks on Hebron in 1929 had nothing to do with the Holocaust. So
I agree. Ben Gurion said that too.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that too, and Martin Luther King.
Let me just refute what you're saying, because
you're not letting me.
No, you're giving me a history that is not related to the discussion.
The discussion is that your claim is that Israel was created because of the Holocaust. It was not. It was created after World War I, when the Ottoman Empire was broken up.
No, Israel was
Ben, I am
established.
reading from the Declaration of Independence. I'm not.
Yes, of course, because that was after the.
You want to refute. You want to refute what the Declaration of Independence is.
No, I'm not. That was after the British left.
This says that we declare, with the effect of the from the moment of the termination of the mandate being tonight, the eve of Sabbath, the 6th of Iyar, May 15, 1948, until the establishment of an elected regular authorities of the state in accordance with the Constitution, which shall be adopted by the elected Constituent Assembly not later than the 1st of October 1948. The People Council shall act as a provisional council for the state of Israel. And then they say,
you can stop reading it, Joseph. We all know those words, but that was because
so it was created
the British
on May
mandate
15,
ended, and it
1948.
continued
Now,
as a
and
reconstituted.
also it says it was created because of the catastrophe which fell on the people in and by the way, 1928, there was no Holocaust yet. Okay.
There was no what?
Holocaust in 1928, as you.
I said that there was Arab anti-Semitism.
Okay.
That's what there was. And Hajj Amin al-Husseini was Hitler's ally and participated in the Holocaust. But way before the Holocaust, Jews were being slaughtered. There were pogroms in Israel and in Iraq and everywhere else.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is Israel did not develop because of the Holocaust. Israel developed because of the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I.
Okay, let's go to Nasir.
Thanks, Joseph. Joseph, thank you for your presentation, but I would want to go back into history a little bit further, because when you say that Theodor Herzl was the founder, I would even go back further to what a lot of British people in the early 1800s who actually supported Zionism, because it was an actually an anti-Semitic movement to rid Jews of Europe. So it was Christians who actually supported it for two reasons. One was because they wanted to get rid of the Jews in Europe, and this is early 1800s, and also because, which a lot of evangelical Christians in the United States and elsewhere support, that we need the Jews to go back so that Jesus can return to us. And this is a very important element, because today in the United States, you find evangelical Christians much more Zionist than American Jews. And it's for this reason, because of the, they want to bring about the doomsday. And so that's my first part, I guess, question, comment. But the other part is that, like, if you look at the United States, we called this country a democracy while there was slavery, while there was segregation. And it's like, you know, I've traveled, you know, to Palestine, Israel so many times. I've lived, my family's from Jerusalem. We live in Jerusalem, but mostly I live in the US. For me, it's like, okay, we understand this, that the anti-Zionist movement or anti-Zionism. But the thing is that just like the United States didn't have to change its government, have to change its constitution, they adapted to, you know, releasing the slaves, to ending segregation. But to ask Israelis to abandon Zionism, like the majority of Israelis freak out at this. So my question is Zionism, can it be reassessed so that it's no longer the Jewish supremacy, the racism, the atrocities, the occupation? Can in this way, would that be more like approachable to Israelis for resolution?
I don't think that you can have Zionism and equality at the same time, because Zionism is about the supremacy of the Jews in Palestine. It's about fear.
That's correct. That's correct.
Zionism is about fear of other people. That's why you need a Jewish state. Why? Otherwise, why would you need a Jewish state if not to protect the Jews? And the idea that you need to protect the Jews by having their own military, their own weapons, their own was acceptable. But if you think about it, it basically states a situation where that fear of other people is permanent, because you always need to have an enemy in order to protect if there is no enemy, there is no Zionism. So Zionism needs an enemy. Zionism needs to justify its existence, because it's a philosophy that is based on the need to protect. And if you don't need to protect anymore, then your philosophy is not needed anymore. So this is why I'm supporting a common government based on democracy, not based on fear. And the Palestinians are really the wrong enemy here. Let's go to Charles.
I want to make a couple of points, because historically, a lot of reference is often made to the Balfour Declaration, which I find ironic because, let me bring it up here. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. Because, you know, going to the Balfour Declaration, which first of all was in 1917, before Britain had been assigned the mandate by the League of Nations. But secondly, as a justification for the founding of the State of Israel, this goes back to what Zeb was saying, that that the Zionist movement was an effort equally among European Christians to divest themselves of their Jewish minorities. But so considering the Balfour Declaration is something substantial to base the founding of the State of Israel on is really counterproductive if all you have to do is read it. And I'm going to read it right now. So first of all, it's a response to Lord Rothschild. I'll skip the opening paragraph. The part that's pertinent is His Majesty's government. So His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. And this is the part everybody leaves out. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. So, you know, basically they're trying to give you a political carrot to ensure your compliance with the British government's way of doing things, but at the same time, they're trying to say that this shouldn't lead to persecution or war, which is exactly what we know what happened. However, the other thing I wanted to mention was that in my reading of Timothy Snyder of the 30s, leading up to and during World War II, in Black Earth particularly, and in some of his other books, he goes through basically chapter and verse how not only did the Polish government and Polish Jews cooperate with the Nazis to create the state of Israel, to move Polish Jews out of Poland into Palestine, but there was tremendous persecution once Hitler got his ball rolling. They were just completely being wiped out. So at that point, and Joseph, I would like you to answer this, because I agree with you completely about your perspective that it makes the most sense to fight within civil society for your rights, not to
Right.
to create a situation where you're trying to have an ongoing, basically other that you are continuing at war against. But in the case where Hitler was rolling over Europe and crushing the Jewish population, that kind of response wouldn't be applicable. I mean, what do you do at that point? I mean, obviously you would flee. And this is not just what happened to Jews at the outset of World War II and during World War II. This is happening to Syrians today. It's happening all over the place. I mean, I look around the world and, as I have brought up before, I went to Syria in 2008 to interview Iraqi refugees. We made like 4 million refugees in that area, destabilizing the governments throughout the, not just Muslims, Sunnis and Shias, but also Jews and Christians. Completely, what do we care? We're after the oil, or, weapons of mass destruction that we knew didn't exist. I mean, these people have to go somewhere, and when they go somewhere, things happen. This is like, and now with climate change, we're seeing it all over the world. So this is a question not just for Israel. This is a question of every national identity that thinks it wants to preserve itself by excluding immigrants and controlling their minority populations. This is the technology that Israel is exporting around the world to other governments. The technology of supporting your own indigenous population. And we in the United States have been doing this since our founding. So we find common cause with them. I mean, our government does in this respect, and in turning a blind eye to what they're doing to Palestine, because it's part and parcel of the kind of racism that this country was established on also. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up those points and hear what you and others had to say.
Let me just respond to, I think your question was, there's no question that the Jews had to flee Nazi Germany. There's no question about it. But the remedy of creating a Jewish state was not logical. Instead of saying, well, we suffered from the politicization of religion, we suffered from discrimination, suffered from violence because of our religion. We need to create a state not based on religion, not based on the politicization of religion, not based on inequality for people based on their religion. We want to create a democracy for everyone. And Ben-Gurion had that chance on May 15, 1948. He had that chance. He took the wrong turn. He ignored the Palestinians, the Arabs that were living there who were the majority. And in my opinion, he knew that Israel does not have cannot create a constitution. He knew that because he promised to have a constitution by October 1st, not sometimes by October 1st. And he couldn't come up with a constitution. So he knew at that time that he was not able to have a constitution for a Jewish state. He knew at that time that a Jewish state cannot be democratic. He knew at that time that a democracy and Jewish state are contrary terms, but he ignored all of it. He ignored all of it. And all the Jewish leaders since then ignored the fact that it was promised to have, so they were promised to have a constitution. So if you say, well, okay, we got this area, and we want to build a beautiful high-rise building, and I'm going to show you the blueprints for this high-rise building in 4 months. And in 4 months, you don't have the blueprints, and the building is starting being built. What do you realize? You understand that a building is being built without blueprints, and that sometimes it's going to have problems. You know that because you promised to have blueprints. You understand the value of blueprints for a building. It's not just so this whole conflict doesn't make sense. John Mitchell.
Yeah, hi there. First of all, I like to say that I'm so glad that Len Bennett is with us today because it makes the whole meeting entertaining. Anyway, I think that many Jews throughout the world didn't really want to go to Palestine. They wanted to go elsewhere. And, because of that, European Zionists were essentially colonialists, because when you consider that 90% of Africa, for example, was a colonial state, a European colonial state. So that colonial attitude was applied to Palestine. But as I said, for those Jews suffering anti-Semitism in Russia and Eastern Europe, they wanted to go elsewhere. They didn't want to go to Palestine.
Yeah,
but
the majority of them went to America by far.
Well, for example, Arthur James Balfour, who was actually, when you read some of his comments on Jews, was really anti-Semitic. When he was Prime Minister in 1905, he passed a piece of legislation called the Alien Act, which effectively banned Jews immigrating to the UK. And so in order to encourage Jews to get to Palestine, if you look at Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, he wrote in his diary that racists are our allies. In other words, the more racism there is, the more Jews will consider going to Palestine. But the reaction of Palestine to these colonial Zionist Jews emigrating to Palestine, a great example of that was the purchase by the Zionist Commission of 50,000 acres in the Jezreel Valley. When they did purchase them, they evicted 8,000 Palestinian peasants out of their land. So obviously, you can imagine the reaction from Palestinians who live there. But I think, I think that most Jews, in fact, even you consider when the Soviet Union ended, that most Jews didn't want to go to Palestine either, but they refused entry into the United States for most of them. Most of them were. So they had no choice.
I agree. But that doesn't really answer the question of Zionism in relation to the Jewish state in Palestine. That the conflict is Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The question is, did Zionism give protection to the Jews, or is it harmful to the Jews?
Well, it's harmful for Jews because it is an anti-Semitic ideology. I.e., you don't belong in the country where you live. You belong in another country.
Right,
So, you know,
Yeah.
so move. So that's anti-Semitic.
exactly. And that's accepting that. Zionism accepts that. It accepts, it says you don't belong here, you belong in another place. I agree with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to, by the way, I got a note where is, just to let you know, Mr. Sheftel canceled this morning. He said that the whole thing was not handled properly, and he decided to cancel. I apologize. That's why we are doing a discussion. I presented my views, and that's and we're not having the debate. I was looking forward to it. Okay, let's go to Shlomo and then Erica, and then I guess Nasir and Len wants to talk again, and also before we hear from Nasir and Len, let's go to Nabil. So because and then Len and Nasir. Okay, so let's go to Shlomo.
So much to say. By the way, I'm not surprised that he canceled it. He's afraid to talk, to argue anything. I mean, he knows where he stands. They're not on the right side. So first of all, I like what somebody, the first person talked about. Let's make definitions of Zionism. You cannot even define Jews. What are Jews? Are people who hold Judaism as their religion, or they are people? I mean, this is not clear. This is an open question always. Number one. Number two, Zionism. I thought the Zionism definition was simply the Jews need to rule themselves. It's time for the Jews to rule themselves, not to be always under another control of other people. That was the idea. It's a nice idea, except that it is not so simple, especially when we talk about Palestine. Herzl, Benjamin Zev Herzl, he came to Palestine about 1901 or something like that, or 2 or 5. And he saw so many Palestinians, so many people live there. And he said, no, let's go to Uganda. And for him, until his death, he believed Uganda is the place. It was a lot of course, rejection and argument about it. But that's for him was Uganda. I don't know why he thought Uganda is empty. It was not empty either. But that was the idea. Ideally, Zionism would exist in a place where you have land and no people. So in that case, yes, the Jews are there. They are settled. They control themselves. Could be some place in Arizona, as far as I'm concerned. I lived in Arizona once. Huge of empty space. And I said, well, why not here? So why Palestine, for God's sake? There are so many people living there. How you are going to handle them? Are you going to do what the Americans did to the Indians? What are you going to do? So the only solution, the viable solution was, at the time, in my opinion, was binational. Have 2 people living in the same place, and maybe government, and what we are trying to do now, more or less. And that, of course, didn't happen. And Zionism, in my opinion, doesn't need a war, or doesn't need enemies. And I also would argue that the Constitution is not that essential, because you have the Declaration of Independence of Israel saying very clearly that Israel will have all the residents of this place will have equal rights. It didn't do it, even not with the existing Arab within the Israel proper. Not to, of course, let alone the Palestinians in Palestine. So we have now in the land that are now basically all Israel, essentially.
Shlomo, are you saying that a constitution is not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary, but not absolutely essential, because you have the Declaration of Independence, which summarizes what the Constitution will be. And what it summarizes is basically saying there will be equal rights to everyone who lives within these borders. And that's it. Now that the borders went all the way to the Jordan, it should give rights, equal rights to all the residents, whoever they are, whatever religions they have. And it says very clearly that regardless of religion, regardless of ethnic group or whatever. So yes.
Can I respond to that, Shlomo, please?
Yes.
A constitution is absolutely necessary. The Declaration of Independence is of Israel as a Jewish state, okay? When you have the vast majority of of the people in the area that are not Jewish, and you declare the establishment of a Jewish state, even though if you write somewhere else that the minorities will have equal rights or other people will have equal rights, that's not sufficient to have equality. That does not give the people who live there the sense of belonging, the sense of true partnership, the sense of true mutual existence, because they are not Jewish, they are Muslim. And you need to have a constitution because you need to say a lot more than just declaring your heritage and declaring Theodor Herzl and declaring the Holocaust. Palestinians were not involved in the Holocaust. They do not have affinity to Theodor Herzl. So in order to have a real peaceful democracy, and by the way, a Jewish democracy is contrary. It's opposite the democracy. If you really want to have a democracy, then you need to have a constitution. You need to show how the government will be created. You need to show a separation of power between the legislative and the executive and the judicial. You need to show that the Palestinians and the Israelis and the Jews and Muslim and Christians will be equal in all these branches. You need to come into detail. You cannot, this Declaration of Independence of Israel as a Jewish state cannot be enough. It's not a foundation for equality.
Let me just respond very quickly. You have a point. I agree, you have a point. However, the United States has a constitution. It's a joke. It's absolute joke. Talk about even free speech, free anything. They do what they want anyway, and they can manipulate it. And there is no separation between the judicial and the executive and all of it. There is no, here in the United States, they are all the same, representing the same powers. So the Constitution is
That's not true. That's not true.
That's true.
We have a Congress, we have the president, and we have the Supreme Court. Now, you may say that they are corrupt, that they are not doing the right, but at least the aspiration is there. Aspiration,
very nice. But
at least you can go to court and you say, we are calling for equality for everyone. I am a person, I am entitled to be equal. And therefore, if my land has been taken away from me, I want it back because I'm equal. I'm entitled to due process. I'm entitled to equality. At least you
yeah, that's what. Let's see what they gave the Indians, right? The locals, right? They wanted Alcatraz. They wanted just this island, and they settled there and said, "Okay, at least give us this." No way. Nothing belongs to them anymore.
Shlomo,
yeah.
The Supreme Court of the States is under the control of the Biden administration?
Of course, the administration. Wait. The government, the president nominates the judges in the Supreme Court. Every president nominates his people, right? And therefore, you have corrupted
approved by the Senate.
All right, let's go to Erica.
Hi. I got a little distracted with people texting me and trying to tell Nabil how to get on. But
Erica, can you move the screen so we can see you better? We see the picture above you better than we see.
okay, sorry.
All right.
I'm looking old. I'm looking old. I was trying to hide my oldness. Charles and John actually touched upon some of the things I was going to say, and I have a lot of things always go through my head at once. But I wanted to, there's so many things I want to say, but respectfully disagree with Joseph on this one thing, is that the fear that supports Zionism, I don't think was started in the 1800s. I think in the 1800s, it was positive for the good-hearted. It was a place for Jews to be together. And then there's also, that we don't put into perspective, is was even then an oil-rich, full of economic possibilities area, the Mideast, even in the 1800s. So I would assume a lot of supporters would want a Jewish state, that a European, let's say a European Jewish state, because of course Jews were already throughout the Mideast, a European Jewish state as a foothold for the other corporation type of interests. So when Joseph was saying,
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Can maybe,
oh, okay, I think
you-
there's a
can
lot
you-
going on.
and also,
Yeah.
can, please, we hardly see your face. We only see,
Oh, okay.
yeah, if you can, yeah,
that better?
please. Yeah,
So, well, it's just, I mean, it's a lot of complication, but so basically what I wanted to, let me just make the point, because I want to see what Nabil's saying also, is that you were saying at the beginning that Zionism was based on Jews needing protection. I think in the 1800s, it wasn't quite all just that, but I think now, since 1948, it is the only way that Zionism can exist, because without the fear, without crying Hamas, or it's like somebody, the Mufti, then there's no reason to have the foot on the top of the Palestinians. And I think the newer Zionists past Herzl were never intended to have, this is why there isn't a constitution, never intended that there be equal rights. I mean, I think the intention from the beginning of the last century, the 1900s, the intention was to take all the land from the beginning. For the ones that were there, doing things, including Ben Gurion, the intention was to take all the land from the beginning, and you can see it now with the Netanyahu situation. Without people crying, oh, we have to defend ourselves, without Hamas doing a firecracker somewhere, then the world opinion would be against the state of Israel for like bombing and bulldozing Jenin or Gaza, whatever. So they keep under the wire of world opinion by just doing these little blasts of destroy and take some more land. And this is why the fear has to be there, not only for the world that Israel has to protect, but for Israeli citizens, because if Israeli citizens are not terrified of Hamas, not terrified of the Palestinian neighbor or the Arab countries, then are they going to without thought send their children at 18 years old to join the IDF? That is and go in and terrorize 5-year-olds. So that's where I disagree with you. That, and I think it wasn't founded at the beginning, but after 48, the only way Israel can exist is with that, to keep the fear going.
yeah.
Okay,
It sounds like you agree with me rather than disagree with me.
well, it was a horse and carriage situation. You kept saying, and you might have worded it the way I was taking it. You were saying that Zionism exists only because of the fear, but I think at the beginnings it wasn't only because of the fear. I think after 48 it was.
Well,
I mean, it had the only way to maintain the way they go about it.
Isn't telling the Jews to run away from Europe because of fear of anti-Semites? Isn't that what Zionism is? How Zionism, Theodor Herzl Zionism started?
Yeah, I mean, it was also, well, I mean, it started with the Christian Zionists, but
Yeah, I'm talking about Theodor Herzl's idea
Yeah.
that the Jews, that anti-Semitism is rooted in Europe, and because it is rooted in Europe, the Jews will always be at risk, will always be under violence, and therefore they need to have a state of their own. And what I am saying is that that's a culture that accepts fear and telling the Jews that because of the fear, they need to go somewhere else. And instead of saying, just like Martin Luther King said, no, we are not going anywhere. We are going to fight anti-Semitism. We are going to fight racism in where we are rather than go somewhere else. And then when the Jews moved to Palestine, they were fearing the Muslims and the Arabs and the Palestinians, and they said, well, they want to throw us into the ocean, therefore we need to have a state. And now it's a fear of the Palestinian Hamas, the terrorists. It's a culture that constantly needs fear in order to exist, in order to feed its existence.
Yes and no. I mean, it's just a matter of the technicalities. Nabil would say, tell people I'm Jewish. I just found out last week, because my daughter's in Germany and a lawyer's helping her find things, that my grandfather was actually on the street, had a business and lived on the street of Kristallnacht. And that's when he left Germany and returned to Poland. He's Polish. But oh shoot, my battery's almost done. So you were saying, sorry, I got distracted by the battery about to die. It's the Jews left. I mean, if you look through I mean, like somebody at the beginning, John and Charles, I think it was Charles, were saying things that I was going to put in about that most Jews weren't relating to Palestine at all. So the idea that there was a fear, and Moroccans had to be scared out of there. I just found out really recently that Iraqis, there was a false flag bombing in the 1950s to get the Iraqi Jews out. And I've spoken to more than one Iraqi Jew that were there, way in the 60s, 70s, that really didn't want to leave. They loved it there. So I don't know whether it's world Jewry, like was embracing this, oh, I'm afraid of where I am. I agree with the concept. As a child, it didn't make sense. My father never said anything about Israel. I'm sure he was an anti-Zionist. My mother would try to be, supportive. So she'd tell me, oh, we have to help them because they're surrounded by people that hate them. So as a child, I'm thinking, why would you move to an area where every country around you hates you? It didn't make sense. Why not stay and fight for civil rights? So I think Joseph is, yeah, I'm seeing what you're saying, Joseph, that it had to be a buildup over 100 years of terror, of making Jews feel that they weren't safe where they were, but then to send them to some place where they're all saying, oh, we have to defend ourselves because everybody hates us. It's just, I guess, cognitive dissonance or something. And the way that would get support would be because it's also a foothold in an oil-rich, gas-rich area that everybody in the world wants control of and has always wanted control of, starting with the Crusades. So, I mean, it never made sense to me as an 8-year-old. So that will, and the more I learn about Jews in the Middle East, it makes even less sense. So I'm just the roots of whether or not it was fear for years. It did have to build up, but now since 1948, it has to be maintained, the fear. Without Hamas, Zionism can't exist. That's all. That's actually my final point. Without Hamas,
Okay.
Zionism has no right to exist, and they know that.
All right. Okay, let's go to Nabil, then Abed, then Nasir, and then Len, and then Shlomo, and then Israel. Nabil. You need to
Yeah, no, I hear now, Joseph. Thank you. This is the first, I've attended a few of your sessions before, by the way, but this is the first time I'm commenting, by the way. So I like most of the stuff that you said, most of the stuff that you do. I'm on board basically. And so I'll just say a couple of things. Being myself, that I'm of an origin, I'm from Lebanon. I came here, I was quite, I was the age of 21. I go back frequently, so I'm very, very familiar with what's going on, of course, in the region. So, the one thing I would say going about Zionism, and I don't want to rehash everything you guys said because I agree with almost everything that was said, except for the fact that Israel was created in 1920. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, the one thing I want to say about Zionism for the Palestinians so that you guys understand, when I hear people saying, oh, I'm a liberal Zionist, I'm a post-Zionist, I'm a progressive Zionist, I'm the Zionist. Zionism to Palestinians and to Arabs, it doesn't matter which form you take it, it's either Zionism or Zionism light. It's like Coke and Diet Coke. They almost taste the same. So they're both racist, right? Now, the Zionism, liberal Zionism, and the left, Israel pretends to be left, it's like in the United States saying to the blacks, hey, you know what, I agree with you. Yeah, of course, freedom for the blacks, civil rights, but live in your neighborhood, don't come to me. I don't want to integrate with you. So this is the two-state solution. When you have a lot of people saying, yeah, you should have your rights, you should have all that wonderful stuff, but stay in your own place. Don't come to my neighborhood. That's the form of Zionism light for us. Those are the people that say, I'm willing to live with the Palestinians, but let them have their own state. I don't have anything to do with that. So like in the United States.
segregation.
I love the blacks, but stay in your neighborhood. Don't come to my neighborhood, right? I love you where you stay where you are. So that's kind of like the thing that I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say, Joseph, that you said something very important is, let me just say also one more thing. Someone said it, I don't know who, and it's perfectly spot on, is the Jewish problem did not start with Hitler, it started way before. Getting rid of the Jews in Europe was or if you want to call it the final solution, it always was ridding Europe of the Jews, period. And ridding them and sending them somewhere else, just let them be someone else. But of course, they wanted Uganda, Argentina, but they decided Palestine, go anywhere, but get the hell out of our face, basically. That's what it was. So get rid of the Jews. And then to your point, and I'll end it with this, Joseph, is that when Jews say that Israel is a safe place for Jews, the only place in the world where Jews are being killed is Israel.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's the most unsafe place for the Jews now, ever since the creation of the state of Israel. Okay, let's go to Nabil. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that was Nabil.
Yeah,
That spoke.
Abid. I'm sorry, Abid.
Yes, hello everybody.
I'm sorry, Abid. Can you just lower your hands when you're done because the queue, it will remove you from the queue, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
Nabil.
Yeah,
So-
when you spoke, after you speak, lower your hand. You can raise it later. This way we know that you want to speak again. Okay, Abid.
Oh, you want me to lower my hand? Oh, sorry about that. Okay,
After you finish.
okay, all right. I lowered it already. Hello everybody. Most of
Hello.
what I wanted to say has been said, so I'm not going to bother you with that. But I wish the Jews, all of the Jews, listen to this message. The people, the last.
I'm sorry, listen to what?
I wish the Jews listen to this following message. What Nasir just said about the Europeans and the Russians want to get rid of the Jews and the persecution of centuries. They are going to tell their children, look, we told you these Jews went to Palestine, they kick innocent people because they could not defend themselves, and they took over their land under a lie. And nowadays, look, the world is getting smaller. You cannot cover this. So I believe it's in the interest of the Jews to fight Zionism and create a more just world, especially given the fact that the Israelis, one of the most educated people. So they could not say, oh, well, we didn't know. It is not going to fly. So let's face it, let's start a new world. And I share
agree.
roots with Joseph. The same, I am here in the United States, and and we have to acknowledge the injustice for the Native Americans and everywhere, just like Martin Luther King. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So, but I think it's urgent for the Jews to start acknowledging this. They cannot live this cheat. I did have a conversation one time. I was on my way to Turkey in 2011, and I had next to me was a Jewish student, a Zionist actually, and he's from Berkeley, flew to Israel for the Wikipedia conference, and we had a nice conversation, and I told him this very thing. I told him, look, they are the very people who persecuted you before. They're gonna counter your argument about being prosecuted by the Europeans, and they're gonna say, look, they are telling a lie. Look what they are doing to innocent people. And this is a proof that they are bad people, the Jews. You know what I mean? So I believe all of these justifications and trying to lie about Zionism, and I think it is in the long term is going to damage the Jews more than anybody else. The Palestinians, whether they were Christians or Muslims or Jews, there were Jews there, of course not many in the beginning, but regardless, they are there, they are sitting there, they didn't pause to attack anybody or but when they were invaded by the European Jews, that is when the story started. And I just think it is time for the Jews to have a stand against Zionism, and it is going to be in their own interest more than anybody else. So I hope it's going to be a beginning.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go to Nasir.
Yeah, I want to agree with Brother Abed Khalaf about him. I never like to criticize a people unless I criticize myself at the same time. So a lot of what I criticize about Zionism, I also criticize about Arab nationalism, because a lot of these religious nationalist movements are really like constructed and filled with distorted history and cherry-picked history and even made-up history. And I don't want to pick on Len, but Len is a perfect example. When he talks about like in 1920, the world was the League of Nations. Who was the world? That's like the imperial world. I mean, what countries in Africa and Asia and Latin America were independent at that time? To say that that was the world is basically, and then this is the same Zionists who say that we fought the British. The British were our occupiers. We won a war of independence against the British. So on one hand, Zionists say the British gave us the independence in the 1920s. And on the other hand, they were our enemies up to 1948. You can't have it both ways, Len. It doesn't work both ways. And then this whole notion, like what Shlomo Orr said, he said that the notion of a land without a people for a people without a land, it was made up history. And so you have these nationalist movements, whether it be Zionist or Arab nationalist or even Palestinian nationalism, they make up history. They cherry pick what they want. And then what makes Zionism particularly gruesome is that they even piggybacked on the anti-Semitism of Europe. They wanted those European immigrants. They didn't want the Jews from Iraq. They didn't want the Jews from Morocco. They didn't even want those Jews from Ethiopia. We want those French Jews, the last 200,000 large population in Europe. We don't want these people from Ethiopia or Yemen or these other places. So in a sense, even when they did accept those Jews, it was because, hey, we formed our state. We need to fill about 800,000 to 1 million people in this country because we are still not overpopulating. Zionism was a failure. What made Zionism succeed was the Holocaust. That's what made Jews leave Europe. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to bring hundreds of thousands or almost 1 million Jews into Palestine. So it piggybacked off the Holocaust. It was an opportunistic movement. And they even today, what makes Zionism even wicked is that it changes the reality. They're the victims. They're occupying. And in Jenin, they went into Jenin, massacred 3,000 people out of 17,000 people had to evacuate in scenes that look like the Nakba. I mean, if you saw the Nakba, and saw Jenin, you would not be able to disassociate the pictures, shooting tear gas at people that are evacuating. And they're the victims. 17-year-old kids pose a threat to the biggest, most powerful army outside of Europe. They pose themselves as the victim. And this is the philosophy that Zionism has been able. They are literally you create your history, you make up your history, and then you change the reality on the ground. Like there's settlers running around the West Bank, burning Palestinian cars and homes, terrorizing people, but they're Israeli settlers. But Palestinians defending themselves are terrorists. And this is the narrative that's just accepted. And people like this just, can say it outright. And this is what's wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's go to, is it Israel now or?
I think it's my turn.
Did you want to say something, Israel?
Yeah, yes. I just make a comment about Nasir contribution. I liked it very much. But what I would like to suggest, Joseph, is that we stop talking about history. Leave it to historians. Let us start from today forward. And not who is right and who is wrong, but what is the situation today and how do we, what has to be done to change it for the future settlement of the Middle East.
But Israel, as I recall, you were not that enthusiastic about the idea of a common government that we are simulating almost every 2 weeks.
No, you misunderstood me. I like the idea of a body above the two governments. We just discuss how to do it. But first of all, we have to get the two governments. How do we get to the two governments so that we can create a body that you have established above the two governments?
Okay, but we are saying we cannot get these two governments to agree on another government above them. So we are saying let's create a government regardless of whether they agree or not. Because
then it won't have any power.
if you say let's wait for these governments to agree, that's really a poison pill.
No, but maybe I was misunderstood. For the two governments to exist means one more government has to be formed. Israel exists, we need another government, a Palestinian government. How do we get to a Palestinian state? Even today, President Biden talked about a two-state solution. How do we get to the two-state solution?
Okay, so your view of the future is two-state solution.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Why? Because I'm
and you said
practical.
let's ignore the past, but you want two-state solution in the future. Does that make sense? Because the past already proved to us that two-state solution is not possible. It brings a lot of violence. So
Not if you separate between the two of them.
okay,
But how do we get
okay, let's go to
Israel right now is an apartheid state. We have to stop it.
okay. Let's go to Samir Square. Samir.
Hey, Joseph, Len has been raising his hand, and even though I don't like to hear from him, I do
Okay,
think he should have the chance
I
to speak.
apologize. Okay, let's go to Len and then
You've got to go to Led because you got to have somebody who was pro Zionism on the stage. Otherwise, you've got a bunch of people talking to themselves. Now, first of all, I wanted to say Israel has as much right to be a Jewish state as the 56 nations of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation have to be Muslim states, and they're all Muslim states. And England is a Anglican state. So whether you like it or not, Israel has as much right to be a state that calls itself a Jewish state as anybody else does. I also want to say that Zionism, and first of all, bringing up the Balfour Declaration, that was just an opinion that had nothing to do with legality. The San Remo Accords after World War I were the same as every settlement after every war, the same as after World War II, the Brits and the French and the Americans settled where Europe was going at that point. And what I want to say is the proof of Zionism is in the pudding. It's been a brilliant, brilliant success. Israel is 20% Arab. Those Arabs are the best of Arabs in the entire world. If you go to any hospital in Israel, you will see Jewish and Arab doctors and patients working side by side. Most pharmacists in Israel are Arabs. They are hugely successful. Only 15% of Israeli Arabs consider themselves to be Palestinians. And there are other people, by the way, who tend to lump into Palestinians. The Bedouin do not consider themselves to be Palestinians either. And there must be a two-state solution. There's been a study recently that came out on monitoring anti-Semitism. What they found was that generally the Arabs are anti-Semitic to a huge extent, but the Palestinians are 93% anti-Semitic. So there's no way, Joseph, that you're going to bring the Jews and the Arabs together with that level of hatred. So there must be a two-state solution. And where I think you're going to end up starting, and the only person, by the way, who's going to set up a two-state solution, it's not going to be you, Joseph, it's not going to be the Americans, and it's not going to be the Europeans. It's going to be the Arab League, as more and more of them are going to join the Abraham Accords, and they made peace with Israel. Shlomo, control yourself. I know you're very excited. But it's going to be the Arab League that's going to end up convincing the Palestinian Authority that it's got to make peace, set up borders, and actually set up the first ever Arab state of Palestine. And I'm totally in favor of two-state solutions. It will probably be along the lines of the Trump administration's Peace and Prosperity Plan, which offered the Arabs $50 billion to set up their own state, and they refused it. And they refused it because of pure hatred, pure anti-Semitism, pure not going to allow an infidel entity in what they think is theirs. Yeah, I know you're having a hard time, Israel, but Israel is a huge success. It's the 8th most powerful nation in the world. It's considered the #1 in digital connectivity. It's the fourth happiest state in the world. And Tel Aviv is certainly one of the best gay vacation destinations. And Tel Aviv has been listed by travel agencies as the happiest city in the world. So this is a huge success, and you guys can all complain and crab, but the Palestinians living under the PA are living under corruption. They are being robbed blind. They're the world's beggars. And what can I tell you?
All right.
The Arab
Thank
League
you, Leslie.
hopefully,
Or is it a
hopefully
comedy
the
I
Arab
want to
League.
have.
Yeah. Palestinian. Let me
speaking.
respond to this racist. Palestinians do better in every country they go to, not just Israel. If they go to Dubai, go to Saudi Arabia, go to America, Palestinians work hard and they do better. It's not because in Israel is beneficial to us or benefiting to us. It's because we are hard workers. That's why. So please don't thank
All right.
yourself or your people for our contributions and our efforts. Okay?
Okay,
Racist.
let's give other people speak. Let's have Samir and then.
Just a comment that the Israeli Arabs are doing a lot better than the Palestinian Arabs.
Yeah,
are doing.
come to America and see what the Palestinians are doing. Go to Dubai, go to Saudi Arabia and see what they're doing, buddy.
Oh, okay.
I haven't gone, but
Okay,
you'd be glad to know.
you haven't seen anything yet.
Okay,
Let's
I've
have
seen
Samir and
Fairy
then
tales.
Zohar.
I've seen a fair amount of the Muslim world, and next month I'm going to Istanbul, which I'm really looking forward to.
Okay, let's have Samir and then Zohar.
Okay. Hi,
Samir.
everybody.
Hi.
I just want to respond to some points to Len when he said that Israel has the right to declare Jewish state because there are a lot of Muslim states around. Well, I can tell you that no Arab state called itself Muslim state until today. The only one called itself Muslim state is Iran. So if you want to equate yourself with Iran, that's fine. But to say that all other Arab states are Muslim state, they don't call themselves Muslim states, none of them, until today. The other thing that Len said about that majority of Palestinians are anti-Semitic. Well, I want to tell you that there is no Palestinian is anti-Semitic because they are the original Semites. Before the Jews ever existed in history, the Palestinians and the Syrians were the original Semites in history. And that's proved in archaeology, not by talking. It was proved in archaeology in 1973 when we found, I was participating with an Italian expedition in Syria. In the middle of Syria, we found the Kingdom of Ibla. The Kingdom of Ibla, that's the ancient Syrian Palestinian, and it is 5,000 BC. And we found 17,000 tablets written in cuneiform. And that told us the whole history of Syria, Palestine, and even naming the cities. The city of Damascus was mentioned. The city of Hama was mentioned. The city of Gaza was mentioned. And that was 3,000 BC. And it is not one document, not two, not three, not 100, not 1,000, 17,000. And these tablets were distributed to all archaeologists and epigraphers in the world. They came to Damascus in 1975 to decipher these tablets, and they were given each country from the United States, from Europe, from France, from Japan, from everywhere. They came, all archaeologists, to Damascus, and there was a big conference, and they were given a couple of thousand to decipher, and they came back a few years later to confirm the whole history of the world and to confirm that these Syrian Palestinians existed. Those are the first Semites and the first Semitic language in history as well. First Semitic language in history. And it is called Eblite. So stop saying about the Palestinian anti-Semitic. They never be anti-Semitic. No Arab will be anti-Semitic because they are the original Semites, period. That
Right.
all anti-Semitic is started in Europe after the Holocaust. That was it. I mean,
All right.
anti-Semitic did not exist in the Arab world either, before that or after that. The my other point I wanted to raise that if we look at the origins of the Jewish people in Europe, we should ask the question about where did they come from? Where did European Jews come from? We found out that they came from the Russian steppe. They did not come from Palestine. They came from the Russian steppe. Okay, they moved into Europe, and then when Nazi Germany persecuted the Jews, the only way to do is to go back where they came from. They didn't need Zionism. They didn't need to start, the state of Israel, they didn't need to go to Palestine and kill Palestinian and dispossess them and take them out of their land. They could have just came back to the Jewish Republic, which is already started. I mean, in 1948, there was a Jewish Republic in the Russian steppe. And no, I mean, nobody would have argued with them or fight with them or anything. They could have just came back where they came from, and they are free to have their own republic. And there was no need for Zionism, no need for Israel whatsoever.
My four parents came from Spain. What are you talking about?
No, that is not correct. No.
You want to? I'll show you my DNA.
No.
Oh,
that I mean, we're talking about.
Don't invent history.
No. That's, I mean, you're talking about Andalusia and the Muslims, Arab Muslims, were the rulers in Spain, in southern Spain, and that was from the 8th century until 1492, when the Arabs and Jews, they were Jews and living under the Arabs, they were kicked out of Spain, and most of the Jews went to Morocco, and some of them went to Italy, but not to West Europe. No, because they were kicked out of Spain and France and all of that area. So the Jews, what we're talking about, those Ashkenazi Jews or European Jews, later when they came from the Russian steppe and moved into Europe. They have nothing to do with those Arab Jews who lived in Spain. Those Arab Jews in Spain, they went either to Morocco or North Africa, or some of them to even Syria. I know, I mean, one of my students, Jewish student here in the United States, I taught him some Arabic, and he told me about his parents or great grandparents who came from Spain all the way to Syria, and they settled in Aleppo. And he said that my mother was talking until then in Arabic, and he didn't know Arabic when he was a child. And then he told his mother, once I'm after 18 years old and I finish college, I'm gonna study Arabic so I can understand what you're talking. And that's why I taught him Arabic so he can speak to his mother. But those are the Jews you're talking about from Spain. They went to Morocco or to Syria or to some Arab country. They did not go back to Western Europe because they were kicked out of it. But I mean, you're talking about now, maybe 400 years later. I mean, in the 1800s, when those Russian Jews who moved to Europe and then settled there. And those are the Jews when I'm talking about, when they moved into Palestine, claiming that, oh, they came from there. No, they did not come from Palestine.
And the Moroccan Jews came from where?
Moroccan Jews?
Where did they come from?
From Spain, as I said. But that was
so you want the Jews from Morocco that live in Israel to go back to Spain?
No, I don't want anybody to go anywhere. I'm just saying that that's their origins. I'm talking about in history, in 1948, in the state of Yemen, for the Jews, or I mean in the early 40s, those Ashkenazi Jews in Europe, instead of coming to Palestine, they should have gone to the Jewish Republic in Russia, which is...
Samir, Israel exists today,
All right.
and it's a fact.
Let's not have. Let's
Okay.
go to
Joseph Zohar was raising. My friend Zohar was raising his hand before all these people, and they've all spoken. Can we
All right.
them...
Okay. I finished.
Yeah,
Thank
Zohar. I am.
No offense, Shlomo and Charles, but he did, or not, but he actually was.
Let's have Zohar.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure listening to all of your voices and views and having a respectable debate on such a charged topic. It seemed that most of you were knowledgeable enough to reply to all of Len's revisionist history lessons or lack of historical knowledge, so I didn't find the need to add too much to it until I heard.
Stop being condescending towards me. I'm not a revisionist. I understand what I'm talking about.
Did I interrupt you
understand
when
as
you were
much as
speaking,
you do.
Len? Did I interrupt you when
become-
you were speaking? You called everyone liars and anti-Semites. Did I interrupt you while you were saying that?
Yes,
So
but you're
please do
insulting
not
me.
interrupt
Don't call
me
Okay,
me revisionist.
let's have
when
Zohar
I'm
speak.
speaking, Len. Thank you. So that being said, I only felt the need to speak up when I heard Len mention how wonderfully the Palestinians are doing in the state of Israel, the Palestinian Israeli citizens. So as an Israeli, first, a bit of background. I was born and raised in Israel, never questioned my Zionism, believed all the history lessons that I was taught, joined the army. My parents migrated from Romania in the 60s. My father fought in the 6 Days War. Brother, sister, all went to the army. I never questioned any of that until I moved abroad and got to listen to a different type of history lessons and other people's views, opinions, and experiences. Upon hearing that, I started doing my own research. I am a trained social scientist of sort, master of science, whatever. And so I do socioeconomic research. And I came to understand that many of the stories that we were told in schools are very much lies, not too different than the type of lies that are told in American schools or French schools or Dutch schools, any kind of state that has a history that is somewhat shameful when it comes to its treatment of indigenous populations. So I'm pretty sure that everyone here is smart enough to know that the Thanksgiving holiday is a lie. It's not really Native Americans who were happy to celebrate together with the colonialists back then, or all types of various types of sins that happened throughout history, but were kind of wiped out in order to create this type of national identity. In that case, Israel is not much different. When it comes to Zionism, if you look back at the history and investigate a little bit more than just the superficial history that most Israelis are taught or most Jews abroad are taught, you will find that various types of factions within the Zionist movement that existed, the Bundist, the Beitar, and the house of Joseph Trumpeldor, other ones, the arguments between Jabotinsky and before that, the views of Echad Ha'am of what type of Zionism we should have, the spiritual Zionism, because Jewish people are not yet ready to a type of definition of nation, definitely not having a nation state. Be that as it may, well, all these factions were fighting on what type of country we have, what would be the question of the Palestinian population. As was mentioned before, the threat to Jews living in Europe kept on increasing, and it created an emergent need to find a solution to the Jewish people. Now, as was mentioned before, many Jews moved to the US, which had by then the largest Jewish population outside of Europe. Some people insisted within the Zionist movement, insisted on having it within Israel. Unlike other nations around the world that suffered genocide or ethnic cleansing throughout the planet, indigenous populations, Jewish people had enough of a strong political lobby in order to convince the colonial powers to give them a state of their own. Mentioning the Balfour Declarations, no other ethnic minority could convince the British to provide them with a land of their own in one of their colonies. As that happened under the protection of the Jewish people, of the British people, and together with the first viceroy of the Mandate of Palestine, who was also Jewish and a Zionist, the Jewish people, despite of the various factions, established Israel and eventually displaced a large segment of the population of Palestine away and gave rise to the ongoing struggle that we are facing today. Now, I am part of the Israeli leftist anti-Zionist movement that I keep seeing that is growing. If anyone cares about what's happening in Israeli politics, you will see that the Jewish people does not have a clear idea or consensus among them of how it is that they want to live their lives. And there's a massive political strife happening right now. Within that political strife, the Jewish people on the most part are fighting for their own democracy. There is a section that is not allowing the conversation to diverge away from talking about the occupation and how this breeds the political problems that we have right now in the country. That being said, I agree with what Joseph said. Zionism, or the idea that the Jewish people have an inherited right to a land of their own within the state of Palestine, is causing our political leaders to join forces with the most fanatic and fundamentalist parts within our population. Some of these parts, I do not think that they will accept neither Len or many of the other Jewish people in the diaspora as part of their own, because they do not practice the type of Judaism that they prefer, nor that they abide by the type of mitzvot or halakha rules that they would like to see all of the Jewish people practice. There are ongoing debates of whether reformist Jews are going to be accepted into Israel, or how back do you have to trace your lineage in order to prove that you have rights in Israel as a Jewish person. And all of this debate that we only allow rights to one type of people according to their bloodline, I believe is false and not suitable for the 21st century. If anyone cares to know more about what Israeli Jews think about that, I more than advise you to look up Avram Burg. He was the previous head of the International Zionist Organization, the previous head of the Jewish Agency that just formed a party called Progressive Jews of Israel, where they fight for one land for both people, both Israelis and Palestinians. You can look up various... Yes,
Zohar, can I just ask you real quick?
Tell me.
Do you think, in your opinion, since you're very capable to answer this, I'm sorry, is Zionism able to be reformed, like I said earlier, that the United States Constitution and political system was, to end slavery and end discrimination, or does Zionism need to be abolished?
So I can tell you this, I never had an idea, I think that Joseph said it before, what does Zionism actually mean? There are different ideas. I know Zionists who claim that Zionism means just a center for Jewish people to celebrate their culture and to have a refuge for Jewish people. It has nothing to do with the occupation of Palestine or discriminating against non-Jewish population. I know these type of Zionists that claim that this is the right type of Zionism, and they will keep on fighting for that because of the concerns for Jewish people. I also know the type of Zionists that think that Israel or Jewish people have a God-given right to control all of Transjordan and Israel because God promised it, and hence anyone else who questions that is anti-Semitic or whatever it is. It's very hard to try to debate on such an abstract issue or topic, just because I know right now what Zionism means, which Zionism means the continuous occupation of Palestine. I am against that, or the idea that one ethnic group or one bloodline or one race will get more rights than any other people. As a humanist, as a normal person, I think I cannot agree to any of that. It just doesn't sit well with me, the idea that I have more rights because I was born to someone else. It's insane. But yeah, abolishing it or changing its meaning or finding a Jewish righteous religious person to say that Zionism can exist as a spiritual center for Jews, the same way that the Vatican holds for Christians or Catholics, without any giving up their rights, possible. And it's very hard to try to debate such a loaded issue that has so many other definitions according to who is reading what history and what faction within the Israeli movement does it represent.
All right, thank you, Zohar. Very well spoken. Let's go to Raphael. Don?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you all, and thank you, Zohar, for your comments just now. I'm speaking from an American Jewish perspective only, and I just want to make a few comments regarding, Len, the comments you make about wanting to make peace and set up borders. I don't know how that's possible when you have settlements throughout the West Bank. I don't know at this point how those, I don't see any movement towards making peace or setting up borders. Also, when you talk about how well the Israeli Arabs or Palestinians are doing within Israel proper, I think you're conveniently leaving out the 4 or 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and I don't think that can be left out conveniently. And I don't know what survey you're talking about with 93% anti-Semitism. I think you should back that up with the name of the survey. But more importantly, I just wanted to state to the group that I think at the end of the day, this is, as Joseph has stated repeatedly, this is about democracy. This is about a democratic society. And this is happening throughout the world. And it's democracy versus ethnic or national supremacy. We have the threat of fascism throughout the world. And I think that the Israeli movement right now is moving in that direction, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, it's about human and civil rights. And as looking at it from the diaspora, as an American Jew, I don't see what's happening in Israel. I can't support an apartheid state and an occupied territory. These are not Jewish values. And I think that we have to work for a civil society and democracy. And I thank this group because I think this is moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that I left?
I just wanted to mention something. A point
Yes.
that I forgot earlier. I'm sorry that. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. There's someone else. Oh, okay.
It's me. It's Abed. It's
Yeah.
Abed. Can I speak?
Sure.
Oh, thank you. I just quick comments about Jews, and it really doesn't matter being Semite or not Semite. We are Semite, I myself, but does not make us superior to other mankind. But Jews are, one of them is the Hebrew tribe, and the other ones are the Ashkenazi are of Turkic origin, from the Khazar, north of the Caspian Sea, which was, they had a kingdom, and their king was a Jew, and the whole tribe converted. And then the founder of Russia, Vladimir, destroyed their kingdom, and most of them migrated northwest and west, and they have now, essentially, it took centuries, but a few of them also migrated and joined the Azerbaijan, north of Iran, and also they are of Turkic origin. But nevertheless, just to comment on history, that was, the other thing is that, as all of you can see how history is accelerating, there is really no room to waste. And it is time, I believe the two-state solution is the beginning of the process, because there is so much ill will have developed as the bad policies that have been taken. So, and your model, Joseph, is perfect. We should prepare this to immediately take place as soon as the two-state solution. This will bring them together eventually down the road, as people start reflecting on themselves and all the fabrication of lies, and they become free and hope they have a way of healing and bring a good model for the world to live in. So that is my, I am with the two-state solution, but it has to be done soon. There is no room to waste, no time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before other people speak, I just want to tell you about the next meeting on July 23rd. We have another debate with Land for All, and that should be interesting, and I don't think that would be canceled. And then we have Professor Daphna Golan on August 6th, and we have the Morton Klein on August 20th. He's the president of the Zionist Organization of America. And then we have Walid Abu Tayyeh on September 3rd. He is running for mayor of Jerusalem. So I just wanted to let you know about those events. Okay, go ahead, Zohar.
Yeah, sorry, I just remembered that what was my original point that I didn't get the time to mention because of the question before that. So Len mentioned one of the most common hasbara talking points about the affluence of Arab or Palestinian Israelis within the state of Israel. What Len fails to mention, that poverty rates among the Arab Israeli population or Palestinian Israeli population is double that of the Jewish Israeli population. The crime rate right now and the homicide rate among the Palestinian Israeli population is is every time high because of the negligence of the Israeli authorities. I'm not talking about everyday racism that Israeli Arabs have to experience when working or living, studying, or trying to have any kind of life within Israel. I'm talking about actual institutional racism that deprives the Israeli Arab population from having the same type of opportunities and basic services that or the Jewish population gets to have. That's it. Thank you.
So Len, I'll let you speak, respond, but could you please?
Can I say one word? Can I say one word? Sorry, Joseph.
Oh, okay. I didn't see your hand. Okay, go ahead.
No, I didn't put up my hand. Yeah, well, I listened to Zohar with great interest, and it gives me hope. People like Zohar give me hope for Israel. And if there are more people, we hope that they will increase in number, people who think this way, and people who feel ashamed that their fellow brothers and sisters down the road don't have the same privileges as they do, even within Israel, as was rightly saying, he knows much more about it than I do. They feel like second-class citizens, the Palestinians, of course they do. Job discrimination, crime, we read about it all the time. And what he was saying, well, there were so many aspects that he touched on that I can identify with. What he was saying about Israel being shaped, what I understood, Israel being shamed by the world into the fact that Israel is a racist, supremacist state, apartheid state. We know all that. A hideous, hideous country that is oppressing 5 million people, depriving them not only of their rights, their political rights, and their legal rights, movement, even water, electricity, and arresting them whenever they wish, torturing them, all these hideous, hideous things. The fact is that does Israel have any incentive to change? Because the US gives 3.8 billion per year, plus European Union, plus England, and lots and lots of money. They trade, they put profit over human rights. I still think Israel can be shamed into changing their ways if there's pressure in civil society. Unfortunately, not our politicians.
Joseph.
Our politicians suck up to Israel. So, but civil society, yes, can bring about something. Look what happened with Black Lives Matter. It drew attention to the fact that wonderful people like Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, etc., did a great job. But Black Lives Matter in 24 hours did a heck of a lot. Came to England, made us think about our colonial history that England has, quite conveniently just sort of forgotten to teach. Just British people grow up never having studied it. Idem other European countries. This is part of the problem. It's all very complicated. There are so many aspects that need to be tackled. But I do hope that more people like Zohar will bring about a change within Israeli society. And I do wish him the best. And I find so many interesting things were touched on. The lady that said Israel needs an enemy, needs Hamas. Oh yes, you'll be sure. There's fear mongering. Of course, it justifies the militarism that is part of how Israelis are brought up. Brought up with all this racism and ideas of supremacy. I would recommend to anybody. I know you've spoken a lot about history, but I find Shlomo Sand extremely interesting to read his books, and very, very likable and very easy when he talks. His lectures are very interesting, and about the history of, Jewish people. It's the same as the Jewish people. There were Russians who were Jewish, and there were New Yorkers and Jewish and British that are Jewish and French that are Jewish. The same as the Jewish people. It's all a little bullshit, excuse the expression. But he goes into the history of it, being a historian. That's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I would recommend reading Shlomo Sand, plus the new Israeli historians, and I'm sure
Thank you.
Well, that's all. And I certainly found all the points that you touched on very, very interesting, Joseph. And I certainly praise you no end. I think we all do. Thank you.
All right. Let's talk to, so this is the list: Dan, Sean, Shlomo, Charles, and Len. But please bring up new issues, try not to repeat old issues. Dan, please.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I was late. Thank you for such an interesting debate. I just wanted to say on the topic of shaming, I think it could be the right approach, but at the same time, I think people that are so far on one end of the spectrum, trying to shame them into changing their ways, I'm not sure if that's the right approach. I think on both sides, people need to be able to compromise, to lessen stubbornness, And I think if someone is very stuck in their ways, trying to shame them into changing them, I think all it does is just make them go more close-knit. If we take a step back, just at human nature. Anyway, that's just my perspective on the matter. And thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, let's go to Sean, and then Shlomo, and then Charles, and then Lynn. New things, please.
Joseph, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you and I see you.
Okay. About the two-state solution, I'm hearing all these politicians and even the Biden administration supporting this two-state solution, and even the AIPAC lobby, the Israeli lobby in America, are supporting this two-state solution thing, and I'm seeing it all the time. But frankly, I don't know, if what they say is what they're, like they're always telling you they support it, but how can they support this two-state solution when already they built settlements and illegal checkpoints?
It's a fraud. It's a fraud.
Like, you see what I'm saying? They're being two-faced. Like, I don't understand. Like, that's why I didn't understand. I don't agree with their narratives. Yeah. So what you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. No, it's a fraud. It's to give the impression that, yeah, we have some solution. It's going to happen sometime, but it's not going to happen.
Do you think they just do that just to stop people from criticizing, stop people from, speaking up against this occupation?
It's basically to give them a cover that they have some sort of solution. And
not only as a cover, but as a way to say that the Palestinians are rejecting it. Like they're saying Palestinians have rejected a two-state solution, which is common knowledge, but it's lies, but it's accepted knowledge, right?
The other thing they're saying, Israel said we brought a peace plan to the Palestinians. They rejected it so many times. But my thing is, if they wanted peace, they wouldn't have to occupy the 1967 border and just leave the West Bank and Gaza alone. They didn't need to occupy it. So if you wanted to have the peace, you would have just left that land alone and gave it to the Palestinians, not to say that you occupied it and then bring the peace plan. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
All right. Let's go.
Anyway, that's
just
it.
Bring new issues, please. Shlomo, Charles, and Lynn, and Israel. But bring new issues, please. Not the same thing all over.
Okay, first thing, I agree in full agreement with Nasir, with Samir, with Abid, and with a few others, and Zohar, of course. But so I will not repeat, try not to repeat. But very quickly, so I just like to very summarize just in one sentence, two sentences, and just to not take too much time. Zionism was created to let the Jews have their own state, okay? Number one. Number two, there was this lie that was land without people for people without land. It was total lie. Number three, after the establishment of Israel, not creation, but establishment of Israel, Zionism should have been thrown to the garbage. That's it. Now we have the state of Israel, and that's it. Forget Zionism for now. Somehow it came back in a very strange way. And now the two-state solution, we have one state. I mean, this is I agree, this is a lie that makes it convenient for both Israelis from the left, the Israelis who really want to solve the problem. They have, we have a speaker here, Yoram, I think Yoram Perry. So he is for the, yeah, sure, we are all well for that, but it is a lie now, and it doesn't exist, and it is a way to escape to some kind of, from despair, because otherwise we despair. There is no, this is not a solution, and what is the solution? Well, you have one country now. Yeah, but it's not Jewish state. No, yeah, it is not. I'm sorry. You wanted to have the land from the Mediterranean to the Jordan. No, it's not going to be a Jewish state. So, but that's your problem. You did it, right? Now that's the reality. Deal with it. And the only way to deal with it is to give equal rights to all the people under this on this land. Back to Zionism. The Zionism that was created to save the Jews, and it did. I would not be alive without Zionism. And my parents would not be, and so on. Nobody else wanted the Jews. The only way they want to push them to Palestine, so that's what happened. The Americans didn't want them, nobody wanted them. So the problem with the Zionism that saved the Jews is now destroying not only Israel, it's destroying the Jews. And the Jews all over the world have to recognize that Zionism is maybe their main enemy, not unintentionally, but all of those people that compare anti-Israel and anti-Zionism and say, oh, this is anti-Semitism, like Len, they are anti-Semites. They don't know it, but they actually are anti-Semites because they are talking against the Jews. They want Israel to share responsibility for their war crimes, for their crimes against humanity, which they do every day. They want to share it with all the Jews and say that we are all in the same place. Hey, don't blame us, now blame the Jews. And Israel always had this purpose of promoting anti-Semitism. And promoting anti-Semitism is very important because then Jews will hopefully come to Israel and demographically will be okay. Yeah, no, but it's not good for the Jews. And the question is, and for the Jews themselves, what to do about it and how to do about it. That's my.
All right, thank you, Shlomo. Let's go to Charles and then Lan and then Israel and then Samir again. Yeah.
I'd like to talk in very general terms for a moment. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Because I see all these difficulties stemming from the same tendency. And what is it that makes a cup valuable if you're thirsty? It's the fact that it can contain water. Now, we can trace the historical DNA derivation of our form, but there is a more substantial identity that we share. And the only way that these kinds of issues are going to be resolved is if we figure out how to come to identify with what is within the vessel instead of the vessel. So this may sound a little esoteric, but think about it. All these issues of historical identity, nationalism, who owns what piece of land around the earth, whether somebody is a refugee, that they have rights or do not have rights, etc., derives from my sense of what I'm entitled to based on my historic identity, rather than the experience of life. If we could prioritize the experience of life within each other more than we say that we're entitled to various resources because of this, that, or the other thing, these issues would be resolvable. And if and until we are able to do that, I don't see how we will ever achieve a formula that they can be resolved. That's it.
Interesting. All right, thank you, Charles. Let's go to Lan, and Lan, please respond to what was said.
Yeah, I have a compliment for you, Joseph. First of all, it's a real shame that this expert didn't come in, because we would have had a real debate, because we're getting a lot of stuff flown around, stuff that nobody's ever heard about, that people think is facts. The one thing you say, which is right, is that Biden doesn't give a damn about the Middle East, certainly not about the Palestinians or the Israelis. He's far more interested in Iran after he's been thrown out of Saudi Arabia. So you're right there that he's pretty phony when he talks about the Middle East and about two-state solutions. He's gone back to the 1948 lines, the armistice lines. So you're right there that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's why I say it's only going to be the Arab League that helps settle this discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to Israel and then Samir. Please keep your comments to new points only. Israel, please. You need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
You're
I can't.
still muted, Israel.
You need to unmute. He's unmuted?
He's unmuted, but he's just not being heard.
Oh. We do not hear you. We don't hear you, Israel.
Israel, you need to unplug and plug back your, maybe your USB.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Samir in the meantime.
All right. Hi, everybody again.
And then we'll go back to you, Israel.
Yes, that's fine. Okay. Joseph, you said earlier that in November, the billboard saying the Jewish state is bad for the Jews is going to be raised in the middle of Tel Aviv in November.
Correct.
My question is, why not now?
Oh.
And now
I asked the same question. It's really a question of the billboard was not available. It was not here. I'll show you.
Okay. Now my other points or other suggestion.
Until October, they have elections. So where is it? Okay, I can't find it. Oh, here.
Yeah.
That's what the billboard is going to say. A Jewish state is bad for Jews.
Yes, that's fine. Now I have other suggestion for a billboard. Why don't suggest that one? No occupation, no apartheid, no occupation, no apartheid, democracy for all. That's another idea for a billboard.
Great. Take out your checkbook and write a check for $35,000, and we will put your billboard immediately after my billboard.
I don't have that money.
Yeah.
We have to raise it from here, from Arabs and Jews here in America.
We are raising it, and it's going okay. It's going okay. Interestingly enough, before we started, I got an email of a good substantial contribution that we received. So I'm very happy about it.
All right. Congratulations.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Let's
Bye-bye.
go to Israel.
Is my microphone working now?
Yeah, now you're here. You're fine. You're fine.
If the Americans are serious about the two-state solution, they have to put their money where their mouth is. What they have to do is call a second Madrid conference and put on the table the Saudi Arabia initiative of more than 20 years ago, and then go from there. Unless the Americans are ready to force Israel to leave the West Bank, we are just wasting our time, and it's becoming an academic discussion.
Okay, Sean, you have a response?
He was talking about this two-state thing. Oh, about the politician. They want to put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
No, not really. I've had another
Okay.
question.
All right, go ahead.
Can I respond to it?
Or Nasir, yes.
Yeah, okay, Nasir.
Oh, okay. This kind of goes back to the theme that Len had said and other people say and many Zionists say. You know, as a Palestinian, sometimes I feel like a foster child. Like I'm not an independent family. I'm part of some grand Arabic world. Like a Spanish-speaking person from Argentina, Guatemala, and Spain is the same because they all speak Spanish. They're all Catholic. Maybe they have some. And it's like, we say, what does the Arab League want to do? Well, why don't you ask the Palestinians, what do you want to do? You know, don't give us, you see, people say the Arab League. It was the Arab League who took the West Bank, who agreed with Israel and annexed the West Bank. It was Jordan that did that. It wasn't the Palestinians who decided that. So sometimes we have to ask ourselves, Palestinians, what do you want? Not what America wants, not what Israel wants or the Arab League wants. The Arab Initiative, yes, we did say, let's look at this. But to look at other Arab countries and to say that they are going to rally and support what's right for Palestine, we're not foster children. We're not the lost little kids running around. We are an independent, unique people. Don't say you are one of the 50 Islamic nations. If 50 Islamic nations live in poverty, that's their problem. We are different. We're unique. The price of oranges in China has nothing to do with me. So this is what I answer to people like Glenn Bennett and stuff who want to throw us and lump us with the rest of the Arab world. I'm not Moroccan. I'm not Iraqi. I'm Palestinian. I'm from Palestine. That's where my roots are.
Good for you, Nasir. You should be a poet too.
A poet? No.
Yeah, you're becoming very, very poetic. Yeah. All right, let's go to
Nasir should lead.
something.
Nasir should lead, be a leader.
Erica, please unmute yourself. You need.
Well, you wanted to change the subject, but I like what was just said. That drives me crazy also, that all Muslims in all countries are exactly the same. But to address the billboard, I'm assuming, I don't know whether you've done, there's a study that billboards actually at 30 days are seen and absorbed, and if there's a thing, well, contact us if you want more about information about this. If there's been a study that says this really works in 30 days. And I was remembering the New York Times, and I think it was, I don't think it was Israel. It could have been, but I feel like it was either something to promote Israel or something to promote the Iraq war, that something along those lines. Somebody paid a whole lot of money to put an insert in the, I believe it was the New York Times Sunday edition, as like a little separate thing that was added to the paper. That was total propaganda for something bad. I can't remember what it was, but I'm wondering how much something like that would cost. I mean, 35,000 seems like a lot, and I think that would be more effective, like having some information, like why is Zionism bad, that people can read. And I'm wondering whether anybody thought about that and thought about how much what the cost would be for that, if it's a lot over 35,000. But that would be a paper.
There are two issues. The first issue is about the amount for that billboard.
You have to pay.
That may be a lot of money. I agree, but that's at a lower.
No, this is.
Now, the second question is the text. And I found out that the text really brings the essential question to all questions. It's really almost the ultimate question, the ultimate issue that brings in all the other issues. If a Jewish state is bad for the Jews, then what's good for the Jews? What's good for the Palestinians? Why is it bad for the Jews? Why is it bad for the Jews? Really, why are you saying that? That's a profound question. And the answer is that it's brought 75 years of constant war, constant killing of Jews. And in Israel, that question is not ever being discussed. 75 years of constant killing of and I'm not focusing here on Jews because the sign is about Jews. 75 years of constant violence, and it's being brushed off as if it never existed. That discussion never takes place. So yeah, Erica.
Yeah, no, putting the idea of the conversation and the words. I'm just disputing whether 30 days on a billboard is going to lead to some place where people will be discussing where they're going to get the proper feedback and the proper dialogue. Because I know I drive a lot fast through lots of states. And billboards, like sometimes if I'm going through Philadelphia, there's some interesting billboards, but I'm driving like 80 miles an hour trying not to crash. So I'm not really paying attention. I can't read what the number is, phone number to call or something is. So I'm questioning 35,000 for a 30-day billboard. And if there's some way to get a piece of paper into something that will reach thousands or millions of people.
Well, okay, yeah, I understand. But this billboard will force the media, we hope, will force the media to discuss. They cannot afford to have a huge billboard like that in the center of Tel Aviv without discussing it. Now, they can ignore a piece of paper, but they cannot ignore a huge billboard, because if one media ignores it, another media will pick it up. So that's what we're hoping. Look, we don't.
So you're going to combine. You're combine this with going in and speaking to all the media people individually and getting them on board to have the dialogue.
Okay, let me tell you this. No, the media in Israel, the media in general, not only in Israel, media in Israel, in the United States, all ignores us. Okay, ignores us. They only speak about two states, and that's it. Right. They do not. They're unable to speak about other options and about the fundamental question of Zionism, of the Jewish state. They will refuse to do that. Now, if you put that billboard in front of their face, in the middle of the city, the chances that they will be forced to discuss it is a little better. Zohar.
Yeah, I just, Sean, if you don't mind me just responding to this particular topic.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You could go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just on the, wait a second. Just on the point on the billboard, I'm just trying to raise points regarding the efficacy or the return on investment, let's say. I just posted on the chat previous experiences that happened in the past year or so. I think it was June 2022, to put up a sign, a billboard in Tel Aviv with the Israeli-Palestinian flag, expecting Biden's visit to Israel back then. It was put down rather quickly. And Joseph, I don't know if, I think you are familiar, but just in case you're not, right now the anti-occupation bloc is the one carrying Palestinian flags in demonstrations, is experiencing some strong harassment from the Israeli police that is now under the control of Ben Gvir. As you know, last week there was an altercation between the anti-occupation bloc that had a sign saying we say no to settlers' violence, and then they were attacked by one of the factions within the pro-democracy demonstration, Brothers in Arms, our ex-soldiers. I think this is a just topic to debate, and I really hope that it will have the impact that you are hoping for. I just wonder if in the political climate in Israel right now, what are the chances that they might take down the board, and then all that money will go down the drain and you won't have the possibility to get it back in case they claim that it causes public disturbance. That's one. Second, the way that I see it, and if you just allow me for a second, when it comes to who is it that we need to convince, or where should we focus our efforts in order to try to bring a peaceful and just solution to the occupation. As an Israeli, I see that we can only do what we do, as the government of Israel can only do what it does under the protection of the global hegemony in the world, which is the US government. If the US government pulls its support for Israel's actions, whether it's by conditioning their billions of dollars in military aid on not building any more settlements, or withdrawing from certain borders, or increasing support for the Palestinian Authority, or whatever it is, the strength or the resources are within the US. Now, the US, unfortunately, it is not, let's put it this way, expressing the will of the entire Jewish American population, but rather of one or several very strong lobby groups, as you might know, whether it's IPAC or other Jews for Israel or whatever type of things that are active in trying to demonize any type of pro-Palestinian action and are actually using now legal instruments such as the IRA definition of anti-Semitism in order to try to oppress any kind of pro-Palestinian activism. If the IRA definition is going to get adopted in many more places, everywhere it is adopted, it will make any kind of pro-Palestinian fight, expression, whatever it is, demonstration, or action impossible or illegal. Which in turn will increase the possibility the US will continue to support Israel in its actions and not bring about any kind of limitation to the thing. So considering how hard it is to change the views or the current climate in Israel, and the fact that the US is investing a lot in maintaining the US government's support in its actions, I'm wondering maybe it is somewhat more effective to try
productive
to focus the attention on the American Jewish population, for example.
Everything is, you know, this is an experiment, okay? But what is our focus? Our focus is not to change minds in Israel. It's not to change, not to have people agree to have a common government. That's not the focus. The focus is to have media exposure. The media in Israel and in the United States ignores us. Not only ignores us, but ignores other options for peace. That's the exclusive purpose, is to get media, to force the media to deal with this, to get some media exposure. And we think that the best way to get media exposure is to put it right in front of their faces and force them to ignore it publicly. They will not be able to ignore it publicly, we think, when it's right in front of their faces, because the public will say, hey, what is this sign? Who puts it? Why are you not dealing with it? That's the whole purpose. It's not to change minds. We cannot change minds, but we can force the discussion. Okay, Samir?
Yeah, I just want to bring up the fact about the Arab League. In 2002, the Arab League had big meeting or a summit, and that includes, of course, the state of Palestine or the PLO representative, and they all came out with the what's called Arab Initiative or Saudi Initiative or Arab Initiative, and they all agreed that for two-state solution and for Israel to go back to pre-1967 borders. And
they all agree to recognize Israel.
Yes, yes, they recognize Israel and all of that. And unfortunately, that butcher of Beirut, Ariel Sharon, was the prime minister at that time, and he rejected that. He rejected that. So, I mean, to say that the Arab League didn't offer anything, no, they did. And if just at that time, if there was the right prime minister, like, I mean, Ishaq Rabin, it would have happened. It just got the wrong.
I don't think any Jewish leader would have agreed to a two-state solution. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, Ishaq Rabin already did it in Oslo. I mean,
Rabin did.
Rabin did. So
Yeah,
if Rabin,
yeah.
I mean, I said that any other prime minister,
Not for sure.
They could have looked into it, that the whole Arab nations, including the PLO, they were ready in 2002 to recognize the state of Israel and have two-state solution. And it seems like, I mean, all Israelis were dumb. They.
Okay, we are almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, just
Thank
make
you.
Shlomo and Erica.
Just very
quick remarks.
one sentence about the stuff that you want to put in Tel Aviv, how to call it,
Billboard.
the billboard. Yeah, I think it fits. It is an excellent idea, but it doesn't fit in Israel. Israelis will not understand what you're talking about, and it will disappear after 1 hour. And whoever carries and put it there is in danger. So that's in Israel. Now, if you put it in all cities, many billboards like that, in front of the Jewish congregations, especially the Congress, you know, and everywhere we have a concentration of Jews, temple, put it there. So the Jews themselves have to think about it and question it. And that's the hope. Because once the Jews will realize that Israel is no longer their shelter, that they can escape in case of Holocaust. No, it's going to put them in a Holocaust. And if once they understand it, then they will look differently and will start influence politically in the United States. This is the main empire here. Maybe, but that's in my opinion, that would be the course of action I would take, and not put it in Tel Aviv. It's hopeless there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, Erica, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, similar to what Shlomo's saying. I was going to ask, and is there any kind of a warranty from the billboard company that if it gets taken down within a week, or say spray painted within a week, will you get some refund? Because I think
No, there is no refund, but I think they will put it again, and we have to pay for the reproduction of the sign.
well, because $35,000, like I like Shlomo's idea of putting it a lot of places at once, and then a lot of people, and not just one town, one city. I think that was a brilliant idea personally, but I mean, I think there's room for discussion. But if you're dead set on this, we'll see what happens.
Okay, let me tell you some just interesting note. I'm getting a lot of emails about that billboard. And in my response to those who send me emails is this. Taking into consideration that this is the first email that you have ever responded to, leads me to believe that the billboard will be effective. Are you following me, or?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
No, I am. Many people are sending me emails objecting to the billboard. And my response is to them is, this is the first, because I sent request for solicitation for contribution, and they object to the email with a copy of the billboard. And my response is, since this is the first time you responded with this billboard, I am led to believe that the billboard will be effective.
I don't bet on it. Sorry.
No, look, there is no guarantee. Let's hope for the best.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Just one question. I have a question about the title. Please correct me on this one or not. You know, the title saying a Jewish state bad for Jews. You know, honestly, I think, I don't know, but I think some of the Israelis there, when they see a title saying a Jewish state is bad for a Jew, they might get offended by it because some of them are so patriotic to Israel. They're pro-Israel. They love Israel. And seeing a title saying a Jewish state bad for a Jew, some of them, they get offended. They might say that it's a bias against Israel. So I don't know, maybe should we talk in a little more subtle way? And it's a more subtle word.
I mean, yeah, but
That's my opinion. I don't know. You could correct me on this one. Maybe I could be
Other
wrong.
people suggested a settled way, but the Israelis don't believe in settled ways. You need to be blunt.
Because I don't know, because saying
Yeah.
occupation, apartheid, they don't like these words, even though, but still,
Yeah.
this is what I'm thinking. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I enjoyed it and hope to see you next time. We should have a good debate.
All right, thanks,
All right,
Joseph.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Thank you very
everybody.
much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.